Alrighty. Hello there. Having fun with chat there. Hello there. Welcome to Super Pac Jr. I am indeed Super Pac, and we have an interesting game for us today. We're going to play How Hard Is It? And how hard is it indeed? We're going to be looking at rather interesting pieces of the period for as far as early video game days of 1982. By this time, video games had come full force. We were playing our Ataris. Everything was pretty much chugging along just nicely. And so what we do is there's a little company out there named Coleco, which was the Connecticut leather company that was formed back in 1932. And they got started just like every other company back in the day. They started off doing something else, like Nintendo, for example. They started making playing cards. And somehow in the 1970-ish period, they wound up getting into video games. And so that's kind of how it got started with them, as far as being a force in the video game industry. And we'll be taking a look at those. Tabletop arcade games. So how hard is it? You gotta remember, these were games that were supposed to look like the real arcade games that we'd go to the arcade and play, but of course they're miniaturized down. They're about that big or so. Well, let's take a look at them, shall we? Let's see, according to this here, I have a big screen of blue. Wonder what that could be. That, I believe, is... Oh, that's Donkey Kong. As we pan out even further, that's my collection, as a matter of fact. Except for the middle two there. See, at the far left, we'll just go over here. You see that we have Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and in the 90s, they made Space Invaders and a Family Guy pinball table. Yeah. Then, of course, Frogger. There is my first Pac-Man, which has a broken joystick, and Galaxian. And they were like the prized thing back in the day. If you pretty much had something neat, collectible, is almost in a stylish, almost like an icon status. Well, sort of, I guess. We actually saw these in television movies. National Lampoon's Vacation. They actually had a little Pac-Man mini arcade cabinet there. But the question was, did it play like the arcade game? And, you know, remember, these were designed as little LED machines that, well, they look like it. You know, it's kind of like the duck theory. Does it quack like a duck, walk like a duck? Therefore, it is a duck. And as we take a look, there's me and my camera. This is an old video that I shot back in the day as I was doing inventory. But there it is. There are the arcade cabinets of the day, and of course, there's Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man, Galaxian, Donkey Kong, and Frogger. And going back to the Pac-Man, let's go back to real quickly. There's the arcade marquee, rather, that they made for that. But if you take a look up here, above it, look very similar. That is my my full-size Pac-Man marquee. If I ever want to change out the Ms. Pac-Man to a Pac-Man, I can do that in my living room. The idea is that they look like the real thing. Playing like the real thing, however, you got screens like this. This is Frogger. And Frogger, well, you know, this was fairly an easy game to recreate, I dare say, because you're simply dodging things, jumping on top of things, and so forth. And then you got games like, oh, well, there's another picture of them. There's some of my other video game collectible thingies there. For example, there's VB from Final Fantasy IX. Why did you do that? Why? And there's Donkey Kong, there's Wario, another VB, and Yoshi. Along with a Donkey Kong vinyl there up top. You got screens like that. That's Ms. Pac-Man. Remember, Ms. Pac-Man had changing mazes. Well, so did this one. This one actually had mazes that changed too. It had a similar scoring system. And you moved Ms. Pac-Man around, avoiding the 4 ghosts. I think the neat thing about these is that I still see them around today. I still see people who've collected them over the years. They've actually, some of them, kept their boxes. Unfortunately, I no longer have mine, nor do I have the manual. But I still have the Coleco Permapower, which are 4 battery-sized things, so they took C batteries, that you would actually plug into a wall socket. And so instead of using batteries galore, you would actually plug it into a wall unit. And lo and behold, yeah, there you go. You'd actually play it with perma power. Coleco was quite good at that. And this is gameplay of Galaxian. That's not too bad. Especially when you have the bezel looking like it does. You know, it looks similar to that of the arcade bezel. And this one's not going to play too well. Nope, I had problems with this earlier. Getting to play the Pac-Man one. Let's try one more time. Nope. Doesn't want to play the videos too. There's Frogger. Again, similar to that, you just move Frogger up there and just pray that you don't get hit. Relatively simple. We'll actually be playing this game, as well as Pac-Man and Galaxian and Donkey Kong. And why not? After all, it's there. These were pretty cool at the time. Like I said, I was fortunate to actually get these as a child. I got them mostly as either a Christmas gift or a birthday gift. And they weren't cheap. They weren't cheap back then at all. I remember a place a long time ago. If you're old enough, you remember a place called Service Merchandise. They'd actually have a big old showroom there that you would walk around, and you pretty much like you were walking in the midst of a catalog. And then you had this big old tablet that you would write down the item number and basic description of what it is, and then you ring it out to the take it out to the cash wrap. They ring it out, and then you walk to the cave in the back, and then it come out on a conveyor belt, and then you pretty much get your stuff. Kind of interesting days back in those days, as opposed to taking it off a shelf and then taking the actual merchandise up to the cash wrap. But there's that. So we're going to explore these Coleco games. We're going to see how hard are they. We've already played the arcade games in some of my previous streams, like Pac-Man. We've played. We haven't played Galaxian or Galaga because there really aren't too many home versions of that. But we played Ms. Pac-Man and we played Donkey Kong. So we're going to take a pause real quickly, and I'm going to load up the emulator. Yes, they've actually emulated these, much to my surprise. That's why this episode will exist in the annals of Twitch history, at least for a week or so. Be right back. Don't go away. I've been on mute this whole time. Good stuff. What I was saying, Coleco actually got started doing this in the mid-1970s. General Instruments actually made a Pong on a chip, so Pong was a big thing in the arcades. They started doing a home market version of it, and Atari did anyway. The Pong unit was essentially two paddles built with some batteries. You connect it to your TV. You can play Pong on your home television console. Then they made a Super Pong later on with even more games added to it, And then other companies started jumping in on that, and one company in particular that really caught the attention of that was Coleco, and they ordered all kinds of chips for this to actually work. And they came out with the Telstar. And while it didn't really compete too well against the Atari, they knew that there was something to be had with this. So they went with a gimmick, and they miniaturized arcade games in their commercials anyway. And now you had the arcade tabletop thing, and they launched with 4 titles in 1982. They launched with Pac-Man, Galaxian, Donkey Kong, and Frogger. And then later on, they released Ms. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong Jr., and Zaxxon. Now we're going to be taking a look at the first 5, because I don't have the other 2. But much to my surprise, I discovered a few years ago, they emulated these things. And so instead of getting this camera here and go cramming it into the screen like I did earlier, a few years back with inventory stuff, we're going to actually run an emulator of the Coleco arcade games, which is absolutely brilliant. So let's take a look at the first one, shall we? Got Pac-Man. Now Pac-Man is fantastic because they actually this is version 2, by the way. Version 1 didn't show a full maze when you turned on the machine, and some people thought it was broken. I actually happen to have a version 1. This is version 2. And let's see what we got here. I'm going to kill the music here real quickly. And I don't have a controller hooked up for this one because there really isn't a need for one. I will, however, run the demo. Like so. Now this is the demonstration unit. It's going to play like a normal Pac-Man game. Of course, there's no score at the top, and we'll do that in a second. This thing actually had 3 games to it. It had the regular Pac-Man, which you're seeing here. It had a head-to-head Pac-Man. 2 people played side by side, and whichever had the greater score, the difference of score, would be displayed on the screen. So in other words, if I had 50 points, but you had 60 points, you would have a net 10 points. And then there was Pack and Run. Pack and Run was you are in the ghost box yourself, and you have to go eat the power pills and run back into the box. Very challenging. Having said that, let's take a look at Pac-Man. There it is with the score. You got 3 lives, just as normal. And basically a 4-way joystick, and ghosts that just pretty much move randomly. So unlike the arcade game, it's a bit harder. They like to guard those power pills, it seems. See, the ghosts turn dark as if they were going blue. Of course, this was a limited color thing. There was actually tinted plastic over the LED characters, so it would make the maze appear red and Pac-Man appear yellow. And in reality, the scoring that you see there and the blue Pac-Man that you see at the top, those were the actual colors. What I loved about this is that the bezel that they included, of course, with this, the marquee and the side art, they pretty much were fairly dead on, looking like the actual arcade cabinet. As you can see, I only scored 2,000 points in this particular first round. Get down. There you go. I like to clear the dots around the maze as quickly as I can, because those ghosts are so erratic in there. Oh! In their movements. And as far as like the 2T movement, oops. Oh, it's so easy to get trapped in here. Yeah, I'm actually playing, jeez. It's like childhood stuff. The scoring is a lot different as far as how many points you get per maze. In the actual Pac-Man game, you can easily get 10,000 points to get that extra life, as long as you know what you're doing. This one, no, it's going to take a few mazes. That's close. Get another couple hundred points here. So the first ghost is worth only 100. Second ghost is worth 200. The third ghost is worth 400, and then 800 for the final ghost. And it's starting to move a little bit faster. I'm surprised I didn't get eaten there. Ah, there you go. Finally. Okay. My dad really, truly, honestly, wholeheartedly did not like this one. And you probably can guess why just by listening to it. It is quite annoying as far as a siren. I have to admit now that I'm, an adult. And I understand my dad more and more each day as I get older. That siren would drive me bonkers. If I listened to my kid play, and I played this endlessly back when I was a kid, which is kind of it's kind of weird because I had fairly good access. Yeah, I knew I was going to do that. Fairly good access to an arcade back when I was a kid. My dad's friend Marty ran a video game store, and in his back room he had a mini arcade, and he had a Super Pac-Man and a Donkey Kong Jr. and a Space Fury and a Robotron 2084 and whatever. And but I would be playing this at home, and it would interfere with outdoor activities and school, along with my Atari. And Dad didn't like loud things, and I have to admit, this was quite loud. There was one game, I think, that was louder than this, and mercifully, oh, come on. Mercifully, it did not get emulated with the drop sound, that would be Galaxian, because they had a bit of a Bezo speaker that would actually, I cannot believe I didn't get eaten there. That would actually simulate something dropping, high from the sky, with a whistle sound. It's more like a screaming sound. Not sure why the keyboard is killing me right now. Just tilt it a little bit. 10,000 points gets you an extra life. Close. 8,890 points. Not bad. Not bad at all. Now, the second Pac-Man was a head-to-head Pac-Man, which requires a second joystick, which I don't have mapped out. It is much slower because it's now keeping active, and I died. Active two Pac-Man players. He's just going to sit there. Oh my God! It's so slow compared to the one-player game. I have yet to see Pac-Man just sit there and get hit with a... other side within Pac-Man. Bad idea. So because Pac-Man scored himself a couple points, I don't have a full score of 600 whatever, now 800 whatever, simply because of the fact that he took away 20 of my points just moving to the right. Now as soon as he dies, it returns back to normal speed. And as fascinating as that is, it's kind of weird seeing one player play a two-player game. This thing did have two skill settings. Skill 1 was actually, in my opinion, harder than Skill 2. Don't know why. We'll just get it over with. Beep. Oh, we both died. No best score. Now the third game here was Pack and Run. We'll play that in just a second. This was also kind of a weird technical breakthrough. By this time, Nintendo was putting out the Game & Watch. Game & Watch was one of those flip-open things. You've seen them. You can Google them. You've seen them. You flip them over. And little games there, little LCD screens. And some of them were the popular games like Donkey Kong and just, like the Stickman, whatever you want to call it. But they didn't light up. They went backlit. They weren't as noisy. They didn't get as much attention as these things. Plus, these were quite sight-worthy as they were a good, 6 inches in size. So, having said that, moving on to the third and final game of Pac-Man, this was Pack and Run. Now, this is a bit different because you are in the ghost box. You have to avoid these ghosts, just like always, except the Energizers don't do squat, except allow for you to go back into the ghost box. So now the ghost box is going to open right about now, and I have to go in there and get it inside. And I got 200 points because I got 2 power pills. And it's much like the scoring of the ghosts in this game, where it's 100, 200, 400, and 800. And once again, 10,000 points gets you an extra life. And it's going to be quite the battle to do that because you're only scoring hundreds of points at a time instead of thousands. For a max run in this case is 800 points. Nice little twist. Okay, I've cleared the first wave. Now it just gets a little harder, a little faster. Yep. So they try to mix it up a little bit so that you're not playing the same literal game over and over again, and that's, quite the challenge, especially in one of these. After all, you bought that Atari cartridge. By the way, the door closes up, as you can see, so I'm not safe anymore. It'll open up again in about a few seconds. Can't believe that worked. So every 5 of these will introduce a new wave. And it will get progressively harder. 1,300, my favorite number. It's just a fascinating little twist on the game. Okay, I got all 800 points riding on this one. Open. 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 There you go. Ooh. Actually, I think that was worth 2,000 points now I look at it. Okay, that was a glitch. I don't care, I got in! Yeah. Oh, that's right. Points are worth more with each wave. They multiply a bit. Okay, I'll take it. Once again, harder and harder. Now, what's sad is I actually did pretty well with this particular version. The movements of this particular, as far as these ghosts were concerned, similar to that of Baby Pac-Man. You're probably asking yourself, what the hell is Baby Pac-Man? And how many Pac-Man were there? And the answer to that is too many. That was, yeah. Baby Pac-Man was a Pac-Man video game hybrid created by Midway. And what you primarily did is that you would eat points, get dots in the maze, but you'd go into the tunnels to play the pinball table and earn extra, advance your fruit. Yeah, that was that. As well as earn your energizers. Made for an extraordinarily challenging game. I loved it. I thought it was a great game. It was a decent, solid pinball table, and it was a hard as hell Pac-Man game. This kind of reminded me of that, as far as the ghost movements and all that kind of stuff. The ghost logic. The game mechanics are completely different as far as their movement versus the actual game, but the skill is still there. It's still a fun game to play, and although it hasn't aged superbly over the years, it's still a playable thing. And for those of us who still have it, have a Pac-Man from Coleco, it is a talking item. People have seen it. Does it still play? Yeah, it still plays. Of course, they look at the Ms. Pac-Man in the living room. Oh, can I play that? Yeah, sure, absolutely. I'm going to switch up the game real quickly. I'm going to hit pause, and we're going to next play Galaxian. Stand by. So you can actually remember to unmute this time. I've seen a couple people do that on YouTube when they stream live, and you see this, and they're not saying anything, and people in the chat would be like, mute, mute, mute. All right. So how hard is it? This is Galaxian. Now, Galaxian was the first color video game that didn't require an overlay in the arcades. The first color raster game, I should say. This was made by Namco, brought over by Midway back in 1979. And so it's the precursor to Galaga, by the way, my favorite game. The game is simple. You have spaceships, and instead of dropping down like in Space Invaders, where they go across and down rows at a time, they just come flying at you, dropping bombs at the same time. Of course, there are a couple of flagships there called the Galaxians, and they're worth big points if you get them in a particular order. Very similar to that here. Let's take a look at it, shall we? And there it is. They did a good job with this one. I'm really tickled with this one. I'm very partial to Pac-Man, despite my name. All that. My name, PAC, is just simply my initials, by the way. My affiliation with Pac-Man is pretty much zilch, because I kind of came before that. But in this case, as much as I love the Pac-Man from Coleco, I happen to love this one even more. This was a fantastic conversion from the game. If you played Galaxian, by the way, it's a fantastic game in its own right. Atari 2600 had a bang-up job of a port for this one. In fact, if I do an arcade versus console on Saturday with Galaga or Galaxian, I'll probably just mash the two together. They really didn't have a whole lot of home ports, but this would be included. Let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Let's go ahead and kill the music. Now this one had primarily 3 games as well. It had this main game, a head-to-head game, which is pretty neat. It's almost kind of like War. And it had Midway's Invaders. Sounds suspiciously like Space Invaders. I wonder why. Alright. Get in the action. Now here, the screaming sound mercifully is not there. And you see the scoring is somewhat similar. Very good. Scoring is somewhat similar. 10 points for a resting ship, 50 points for a diving ship. The flagships are worth varying points, depending on if they are in flight and how many ships are guarding them, or rather with them during flight. That's not too bad. Like I said, normally it's a screaming sound that goes for that. You can Google that because I don't want to play that. So this one sounds quite tame in comparison. But as you see, the game is fairly easy to play. It does get harder as the game goes on because they'll be dropping sometimes 2 and 3 bombs at you at a time, as you're seeing right now. And I just like getting rid of them as they rest. They don't score a whole lot of points, but I get a whole lot of waves from it. And this is a survival of the fittest game. How long can you survive the onslaught of them just drop it down at you? Ah, boo. Yes. And then it shows you a assault and wound, the last thing before your ship got bombarded with a bomb or collided with a ship, the enemy ship. Yeah, this was a pretty cool table. And like I said, it looked really cool with the bezel and everything like that. It sounded okay. Like I said, you got to get past that screaming part as they drop down on you. It's ear piercing. And of course, I couldn't play it at night because my dad would get pissed off from he would get woken up from it. Let's try it one more time. See if I can do a little bit better of a job, and then we'll do a head-to-head. As strange as that is, because there's only one person here for a 2-player game. And much like the original game, you can only have one shot up on the screen at a time. And if you don't get that last ship, it eventually will drop down and run away. Really? Okay. Just like that. Now, according to Wikipedia, first round of these, they sold over $3 million of these consoles, these tabletop, in the first year, 1982. Half of which was Pac-Man all by itself. So Pac-Man made about $1.5 million, and then Donkey Kong, Galaxian, and Frogger combined made the remaining $1.5 million. That's still not bad. That's 500,000 each. Average. But that's, you know, $1982. That's massive. This is a little toy company doing that. It's funny, after the video game crash of 1983, the movement then went on to computers, and they released the Coleco Atom, but unfortunately it kind of got released before the full weight of the crash came by, and the Atom didn't do too well at all. But they kind of got out of video games altogether in 1985. But at the same time, in 1983, they released the Cabbage Patch Kids. And if you remember them, I'm sorry. It's funny. I remember in school, girls bringing their Cabbage Patch Kids to the classroom and everything like that. Kind of tolerable. I don't imagine that would be tolerable today. I don't know. I haven't taught in like forever, but because I used to be a teacher a long time ago. The fact that they could switch gears like that and then pretty much, make another few $1,000,000 thanks to the popularity of Cabbage Patch Kids. Unfortunately, though, with some management and some bad things that went on, they ultimately disappeared in 1989. But they left quite a legacy. They made entertainment systems, if you will, like the ColecoVision, but they also made pinball tables for the home. They made raised swimming pools, if you can believe that. That's something that was huge back in the 1970s. They actually made more than anyone. So they got around. They did a lot. But this was one of the things that they really concentrated on from the 1970s into the 1980s until ultimately the crash. Now let's take a look at the next game here. This is a tabletop Galaxian that we're playing, and two of you could play side by side. Be a little uncomfortable because the joysticks are only that far apart. But one plays the top, one plays the bottom, and there's some ships in between. Oops, that's the wrong one. Good job. What's it? Up, down. Oh, you know what? It was the second joystick. Never mind. We can't play that way. Good, because it played similar to that of War, where two players would be shooting at each other with some ships coming at you as well, one towards the top, one towards the bottom. It was actually fairly good. But if you didn't want to play that, you could play Midway Invaders, which played something like Space Invaders. In fact, a great deal like Space Invaders. Space Invaders was really good. Space Invaders was my first arcade game. I played back in the summer of '78, and it was kind of scary, if you will, because of the constant, the sound of it moving, faster and faster as fewer and fewer ships remain on the screen. Yay! And the art that was on the game, the side art and the control panel was actually quite daunting. Come on, you got it. And of course, it didn't play exactly like Space Invaders. It played pretty close. They didn't advance a level down, if you will, because of the limitation of what the screen could actually do. But this was a lot quieter than Galaxian itself. And as a result, I could play this at night. Yes! And Space Invaders was the first really big, aside from Pong, 6 years prior to that. Space Invaders was the first really big arcade game. It actually created a yen shortage in Japan. And Taito was responsible for this game. And you still see it kind of come around from time to time as retro gaming comes in waves, and you can actually play this with 1UP Arcade. They make a thing of that as well. And if you had, I gotta get rid of that bottom one. Sure, they make it to the bottom of the screen, just like in Space Invaders. The game is over, regardless of how many lives you have left. It's bad. Bad. It just so happened that Midway brought over Space Invaders from Taito. As like I said, in the summer of '78. Remember, my dad's friend brought it over into his shop. It's rather cool, I have to admit. Of course, I was quite young then. I had to actually step on a box to play it. Oh! Yeah, I gotta hurry. No, they're too far apart. Good, now that's good. I don't think there are extra lives in this one. Ah. Not too bad. Not too bad. 4,840. Like I said, this was a really good conversion for Galaxian as far as the something to play at home. But like I said, they tried to keep it as interesting as possible, so they threw in a few games. Now the next couple of games we're going to be playing doesn't have a variety of games to play. It's just simply the game itself. Next coming up will be Donkey Kong. Now, Donkey Kong, I love to pieces. I love the arcade game. It's one of my absolute favorite arcade games from yesteryear. I was very pleased when Hallmark released back in 2018, 2019, one of those years, the Hallmark Keepsake Ornament Donkey Kong arcade cabinet. Gorgeous. They did a beautiful job with it, making it look just like how it originally was produced. Coleco did a very good job again with the box art. Gameplay is something else. We'll check that out. We'll check that out. Excuse me, I can speak in just a second as I hit pause. I think the reason why I say how hard are these, some of the game mechanics are a lot different from that of the arcade game. The scoring could be different as well. Like I said, with Pac-Man, you can easily get 10,000 points with a single maze, earn that extra life. You could do the same thing in the Coleco arcade tabletop version, but wouldn't be able to do it in one maze. No, you have to do it probably in about 5 or 6 if you consistently score all those points. I want to take a moment here to thank my latest followers. I really do appreciate it. I got a couple of dozen followers right now, and I'm tickled by that. Thank you very much. Vin362, thank you for following. And the Random Hero, thanks for following me as well. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you. So, the next game that we got to play, this was a really cool game. Like I said, it's one of my favorite arcade games. Put it in my top 3. It is Donkey Kong. Now, when Coleco released later on the ColecoVision, you got packed in a Donkey Kong game so you can enjoy it right out of the box. And they used to do that back in those days. You bought a video game console, and it actually included a game, so you can actually enjoy it. Oh my God! What a concept! As opposed to having to buy a game separately. Of course, you would want to buy other games with as launch titles, because they had that back in those days as well. But, well, again, they released 4 of these all at the same time: Pac-Man, Galaxian, Donkey Kong, and Frogger. And I tell you, the first 2 were really, really good. I actually played very similar to that of the arcade game. A little bit harder, though, again, because of the scoring mechanics. So here we go with Donkey Kong. Let's take a look at it. Actually, do I even have it mapped? I don't. Ahead myself one more time. I get to do stuff like that because I'm a pro gamer. Give you a little bit of history of myself, by the way, since I do have new followers. If you happen to catch the VOD, or you're actually watching me secretly and not chatting, Um, I've been a video gamer since literally the mid 1970s. The first thing we got at home was a Super Pong unit. Then a little bit later, the Atari 2600. And of course, more things followed along the way too. You got more games, more systems, and by the 1980s, well, the second and third generation of gaming came out. With the second being the ColecoVision and the television, whatever like that. Third generation, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and of course the Sega Genesis came out. Master System, the Atari 7800, Super Nintendo. Oh my goodness, Sony, it's rather the Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation. There's a lot. And I was watching one of the other streamers. I was in her chat, and the discussion came about what Nintendo did over the years and how they were really not too keen on their old games as far as re-releasing them or putting them out there as something to play. They have over the years. They just do it a little bit differently. And it was JoJo. She said that Nintendo doesn't backwards compatible, and she's right. They don't, with the exception of the Game Boy. And she didn't consider the Game Boy a console. Well, yeah, I guess not. I guess maybe not, simply because of the fact that it's a handheld. But it's a handheld that took interchangeable cartridges. To me, that makes it a console because it's not, unlike the Game & Watch, which you have, what's a self-contained thing, and unlike these here, where they're all self-contained games. There are no other games in there. Yeah, they have mini games, whatever. But that is a one-trick pony device. The Game Boy was not a one-trick pony device. You want to play Tetris, you put in a Tetris cartridge. You want to play Super Mario Land, you put in the Super Mario Land. If you want to play the Zelda Link's Awakening, you put that one in there, and so forth. To me, that makes it a console because it actually had interchangeable games. And the Game Boy went from 1989 all the way up until, thanks to the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, and the first series of DS, a Game Boy playable something or other lasted for over 15, almost 20 years. So, yeah, that's their way of keeping the classics alive, because on the Game Boy Advance side, they actually brought the NES Classic series, like Pac-Man and Xevious and Super Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong. You played the NES games, of course. When you play the original cartridge, you have to buy a brand new cartridge, and they charge you at a brand new cartridge price of $20. And then on the Wii, you got to play the Virtual Arcade, and you want to play their classic games. Well, you have to download it. You can play the original cartridge. Of course, you have to pay a new price for that. And they're one of the few companies I know that could successfully resell their same thing, literally the same program, over and over and over again to newer audiences. But they did it their way, and they were so resistant to disc media. Hence why the Nintendo 64 was a cartridge, very expensive cartridge. But the GameCube came out. Yeah, they went to this, but they went to the little 3-inch discs. So there's that. Nintendo literally, however, got started. They didn't get started with Donkey Kong. They actually had a couple of games before that, Sheriff notably, which was okay. You can find that one. But the big game that put them on the map was Donkey Kong, and it was created by Shigeru Miyamoto. And worldwide smash. It was a huge, huge hit. So, of course, Coleco, they, without really any assistance from Nintendo, they actually made Donkey Kong for the ColecoVision, but prior to that, they made this thing. As you can see, it's, well, Donkey Kong-esque-like, I guess. Donkey Kong's there at the top. Pauline there at the top saying help, just like in the arcade game. And you have broken ladders, and you have somewhat incomplete grids, platforms, whatever you want to call it. See how it plays here real quickly. So we will kill my random thoughts music here. And let's go ahead and hit Donkey Kong. Okay. Now here you have hammers just like you do in the arcade game, but they don't do jack. Oh, good job. And the controls are a little sloppy. you can easily run off the side of the board here. Sometimes you can jump and nothing happens. There's my little... missed. I'll show you an Easter egg, however, in this game in just a second. Yeah, you know what? 1,000 points. Good job. Do 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 do. So you look at this, and I've played Donkey Kong a few times here on Twitch, and it's a lot easier with the other versions, the Atari version, the ColecoVision version, hell, the NES version, the arcade version. This one, yeah, at least I got 400 points more. And unlike the other versions, the other games that I just played, Pac-Man and Galaxian, this is a one-trick pony. Literally, you only play the one game. And it features two boards, this board, the barrel board, and the rivet board. It's a pity the hammer doesn't do anything. I'm pretty sure they could have actually made it do something as far as, put an extra character on this particular thing, but alas, that wasn't meant to be. Okay, I'm just gonna... Hey, finally. I think that last one was hard. Check this one out. That one that I missed over there, that one's an absolute fun one. It's been guarding it the whole bloody time. Yep. Oh, now he moves. I will say this: I'm actually surprised that these are emulated. I'm delighted that they're emulated. Don't get me wrong. And the sound is absolutely correct. And they really did look like this. You saw in the little video thing that I put out there. There are two freaking fireballs there. Fall right off the side. Good job. 8,200 points. But they really did look and sound this way, and this is true to life, the actual Coleco tabletop games. For what it's worth, these cost a pretty penny back in the day too. I will admit that. But there you go. We're gonna do something here. I'm gonna hit up. I'm gonna hit reset. All right. Now, what's neat about this is that all of the characters are lit, which is fantastic. You see the bonus. You have all the scoring, the 3/8 and the zeros because they didn't have 50 or 10 points, whatever like that. The 2 extra lives. I've noticed now the help is not lit, but the best, and of course all the rivets and the bonus things are in there. Good idea if you could actually go up. See, I start with a pretty high score. How's about that? Don't appear to have any extra lives. I did hit jump. Yep. And so what it was is that you could either start with a high score or you can start with a bevy of lives. Let's see what I got here. 9,000 points. Now, sometimes they do stuff like this in the games. That's more for the programmers, so they can actually, build up to a point, then they can start where they left off, and whatever like that. And here I notice that my score just continues to keep building up. Hey, I got over 10,000 points. Look at that! Amazing. No extra lives. Nerder TPC, hey there! How you doing? Oh yeah, I was commenting that I used to have the. Oh, this used to have nothing. I still have these. If you check the beginning of the video, you see that the picture of these sitting in my garage on a top shelf. Oh, good job, Skip. There's old school. There's old school. Yeah. Well, I had these as a kid. I have 5 of them. I have Pac-Man, Galaxian, Donkey Kong, Frogger, and Ms. Pac-Man. I did not get Donkey Kong Jr. nor Zaxxon. And that's today's. How hard is it? I contended these were a bit harder than the arcade counterparts. I don't know if you can YouTube these. You can find the videos of Mr. Arcade going into the arcades and then zapping them down to handheld size. For the people who just whatever. It was the 80s. This is these were neat because these were kind of like talk. You see these in a person's home or in the bedroom. In my case, friends come over, and oh, you really have one of these? Yeah, I have them. Yeah, check it out. Yeah. It was a strange time. This is pre-video game crash of 1983, so these came out primarily in 1982, and they weren't exactly cheap. Depending on where you got them, they usually average around, I think, around $80. But I did wind up with 5 of these, so yay! But this is pre-Coleco Vision, so I tell you, I'm astounded that they emulate these. I'll go back to the picture source. Hang on for just a second here. Is the picture still up? No, of course not. Why? Because I am stupid. Let's try this again, shall we? This is all live, folks. Doing it right now. Photos. All right. There we go. There it is. Who manufactured Coleco? Coleco manufactured Coleco. Coleco was originally the Connecticut Leather Company, founded back in the early 1930s. And they made, they made all kinds of clothing kits and stuff like that. It was actually, they helped out in the World War II for our soldiers and such like that. And then through acquisitions and purchasing companies at the time, they started getting into other products, particularly of games. And they actually at one time made more raised ground pools than anyone. But it wasn't until the mid-1970s where they actually got interested in electronic games, thanks to General Instrument, who actually made essentially Pong on a chip. And with Atari out there releasing Pong, of course, for the arcades, but they made Pong home units as well. They weren't consoles. They were one-trick pony devices where you just simply plug it in. They use batteries. You plug it into your television, and you played Pong on your TV. So Coleco was out there, and they made the Telstar, which was kind of a competitor to the Atari VCS, but of course Atari VCS was just like non-stompable, monstrous machine of its time. So Coleco went and made these gimmicky things like this. And you can see these, there's Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. The two in the middle, I actually got them in the mid-90s, if I'm not mistaken. Either that or the, the early 2000s. That's Space Invaders and Family Guy Pinball. They were not made by Coleco, but they're certainly made to look like they were made from Coleco. And then finally, Frogger, another Pac-Man, because this one had a broken joystick, and Galaxian. And I'll just flip through these one more time for your benefit. Took this video a long time ago. But there they are. And they essentially look like the arcade cabinets, bezels and marquees and whatnot withstanding. And they were actually pretty cool. This was the thing back in the day. And if you had one, yeah, pretty cool. Not that you were well off, you just, somebody really loved you, I guess. And this is what the screens looked like back in those days as well. There's Ms. Pac-Man. This is my junk. And this is what the game looked like. We just played Galaxian right before Donkey Kong here. And it really looked like that in Galaxian. Mercifully, they did not emulate the dropping sound of the ship because it pretty much was an ear-piercing scream. And mercifully, again, they decided not to do that. There's Pac-Man. And now Frogger, we'll play Frogger in just a second. And there they are. And I don't know, you might recognize him. Anywho. Yes. So back in the day, when VB came out as a toy, I worked for the Electronics Boutique. And we've talked about this on your stream before. EB Games, Electronics Boutique, and then the other side, their competitors was they were NeoStar, but they were two different brands. They were Babbage's and Software, etc. And they merged together. And they actually did some stupid things. They went out, they kind of regrouped and came back under Babbage's and formed later on GameStop. And the primary reason why, and you and I worked for GameStop, I worked for them a whole lot of years ago. You were there shortly after my departure. The reason why they were called GameStop, by the way, is because in many of the malls, EB Games did not allow, they had it in their contract there for their lease, rather, you could not have a Babbage's or a Software, etc. in the same mall with an EB Games. And so GameStop, they said, F it, we're going to be called GameStop. And because GameStop was not one of those two brands, they were allowed to compete in the mall for EB Games. And there's that. Lots of O-Vision products out there. Yep. Good old loopholes. Yes, indeed. Loopholes are fun. Back when I was with GameStop, I became a store manager of GameStop back in 2000. And my store was the fourth one in the entire state. So that's how far back this goes. And we were kind of branding ourselves as a ma and pa shop, not the behemoth that they are now. So we actually had a lot of people come into our store to try to sell us health insurance, try to sell business plans for them, or like car maintenance, that type of thing. They thought we were just a local shop. Good old pigeons, I guess. And fun days. Back to the subject at hand. Here is old Donkey Kong. Now, Donkey Kong for the Coleco arcade tabletop. Let's see. Let's get you back up here. I'm going to do one more little Easter egg. I wonder how many times I can do this, actually. Okay. Back to that. Now, sometimes it'll start you off with a ridiculous score, and it's neat. It's actually just upping my score. Probably because it's the emulator, I'm doing a soft reset as opposed to an actual hard reset. So I might just do that. This is my wife was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? This is not really exciting." She's right. It's not. But I'm something of a historian. I've been doing this for far, far, far too long. And the first thing I ever got as a video game of any kind was a Super Pong back, I say, around 1976 or so. And just think, I'll be 50 next month. Lucky me. I jumped. Yeah, 17,600, whatever. I think so. My kids, I call them my kids. They're both grown now. But they kind of took over my gaming habits, if you will. It's fine. Probably they're discovering that the hard way. But when they're my stepkids, to be honest. So I met them back when they were in their preteens, and they loved video games. They were quite tickled that their mom was hanging out with somebody who actually was heavy into video games at the time. And the first thing my son said to me is that, "Oh, good, where are your games?" So I showed them some of my early games like the PlayStation, because the PlayStation 2 was still doing stuff back in the day. And I showed them a lot of my PlayStation 1 games, and they were first prints. And I said, "You better take care of these." And he got into literally taking care of just about everything I have. So he's kind of been like my trustee, if you will, as far as gaming. I'm very proud of him. He's done college and all that kind of stuff too. So he's discovered it's neat to see what was yesteryear's stuff. And he discovered how hard yesteryear's stuff truly was. And I said, that's not what they weren't hard. This is just what we had. This is how it played. So when you look at like the middle generation's Crash Bandicoot, which was an exceptionally good game, but compared to a lot of today's platforming stuff, it's hard as hell. So now when you step back a couple more generations behind that, and you look at something stupid like this, like, oh my God, how the hell can you play that? Well, you just did. And that's just what we played. And back when I was a kid, this is what I played. And we're going to switch up to, what's the next one up here? Frogger? Frogger. Alrighty. I'm going to hit pause real quickly so I don't dox what I have. Get off that screen. Thank you. Believe it or not, Parker Brothers made a couple of these as well, notably Q*bert. They made it for the home consoles like the Ataris and the ColecoVisions and whatnot. But, is this it? Yeah. This is it. There it is. But Coleco did not make Q*bert. Okay, I'm getting a no drive. There you go. What the hell's taking so long here? Alright. As I go deaf in my headphones there. Good job. Okay, is it showing? Yes, it is. Okay. Let's take a look at what we got here. Bunch of zeros. Let's just go ahead and read. This is Frogger. For what it's worth. This is probably the easiest game for them to do, if you will. Even the 2600 version of this game was good. It's not that hard of a game. Sega was the creator of this game back, I believe, in 1982 or so. And while they made their own games for the Ataris and the Colecos and all that, they surprisingly did not make this one. They actually licensed it out to Parker Brothers. And for those young enough not to remember, oh, jeez, dumb. Parker Brothers is no longer a brand per se, nor is Milton Bradley, for all of them have been purchased out by Hasbro. sadly. Ah, boo. And Frogger, much to his credit, has... Oh, man. I forgot about Despairing Turtles. All right. Reminded of the Seinfeld episode where George is running around with the arcade cabinet, dodging cars and stuff like that. Because why not? Didn't realize that. Yeah. So Parker Brothers made some games too. One of the big ones. They actually had some Star Wars licenses for the Atari. The Empire Strikes Back and the Return of the Jedi. I think also for the ColecoVision they made the Atari, the Star Wars arcade game that Atari made back in the early 1980s. But they did Frogger for all the systems and all whatnot. But Coleco did the tabletop. It's good stuff. It's good stuff. Let's see if we can do one more. Does it reset? No, we have to reset the hard way, don't we? Yes, we do. Hasbro owns everything now. Yeah, I mean, even Kenner. Kenner, made the Star Wars toys back in the day. And although they were kind of brought back out as a brand thanks to the Star Wars prequels in the 90s, I have a GameStop story about that too. Because I worked for them for far too long. So Kenner was releasing Star Wars toys for the Phantom Menace, and GameStop, the entity, the brand, whatever you want to call it, they probably bought far too much, and we had sitting on our shelves for way too long. Oh, I'm waiting for the snake to pass. For far too long. Their figurines and their toys, and no one wanted the Phantom Menace stuff. They wanted more of the classic stuff. So there they sat until they were practically pennied out. And our CEO at the time says we'll never buy another Star Wars toy ever again. Now, much to my chagrin, I didn't know this until I spoke. I still have a couple of people that I know at GameStop after all these years, because I haven't worked with them almost 20 years now. They bought out Think Geek. You suck. They bought out Think Geek, and I love Think Geek products, and that's why you started seeing them in the GameStop store shelves. I don't think they exist anymore as far as a brand. But ironically, they had a lot of Star Wars licensing through them. So, what goes around comes around. Anywho, that's Frogger. Frogger was an easy game to duplicate as far as the gaming mechanics was concerned. You avoid cars, you avoid bad guys later like the snake, and you hop on things that will take you across the water, making it into the caves there at the very top, etc., etc., etc. Of course, bonus time for whatever you had left as far as the time was concerned. It was a good game to play. I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. But I think it's also the weakest of the games as far as because it's a one-game pony. You can't reset it with your joystick. You can't reset it with a button. You have to actually turn off the machine and turn it back on. But there it is. So how you doing, Nerdad TPC? If I mangle that, I apologize. People call me Super, so I disagree. Actually, I've been going by the name something of a name Pac-Man for a long time, because PAC, those are my initials. And of course, the game came out and got popular. Well, why not? And I made comments on other streams here, how popular some of these were because they had their own breakfast cereals, their own cartoons. There was a Frogger cartoon, just like there was a Donkey Kong cartoon, just like there was a Pac-Man cartoon. And they had pastas, and they had board games. In my last stream on Saturday, I discovered the video game Defender, which was Williams' first video game in 1980. 1981 was officially released. Milton Bradley made a board game because they made a board game of Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and even Ms. Pac-Man, but they made one of Defender. And apparently it played something similar to that of a chess game of sorts. Getting wrecked in Tekken. Ah, now which Tekken is it? Tekken 7. Ah, okay. Yeah, no, I don't have that. No, I actually stopped with 5. I stopped with 5. I discovered as I, got a family and everything like that, and I got more serious in my my work, I guess. Gaming kind of took a back seat, especially putting kids through college and everything like that. But I will still whip out the PlayStation 2 or the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox or whatever like that, and just play a game or 3. I've actually been playing a classic role-playing game of yesteryear called Crystallis. It was a game produced by SNK back in 1990. It's a really hard game. It's a good game too, but it's kind of hard to describe back in those days because I actually was there to sell it. What that game actually is and how it plays and what it's all about and everything like that. So, someone's trying to get a hold of me. Hang on for just 1 second to make sure that it's not somebody that I need to answer real quickly. Pardon me for just a second or so. Okay. I'm gonna put on pause for just a second. It's my daughter, so hang on for just a second. I'll be right back. She normally doesn't call me roughly at this time, so just give me a second, and I'll be right back. I worry when my kids just call me like that out of the blue. Nothing major. That's okay. Anyway, let's go ahead and switch to the last game of the evening. Let's get back to the old handhelds. And that'd be old Ms. Pac-Man. Alright, now, I love Ms. Pac-Man. I like it more than Pac-Man per se, being that it's a harder game. But the funny part is that I didn't play Pac-Man like most of my friends did back in the day. I would play. I just learned the game mechanics and just play it that way. I never learned patterns. So there's that. So when Ms. Pac-Man came out, there were no such thing as patterns in there because the top 2 ghosts didn't go to their corners, unlike Pac-Man, and they didn't scatter mode the 4 or 5 times per maze like they did in Pac-Man. They only did it once. They did a reversal. So we played this one. Ms. Pac-Man, of course, was the top game of its time. It actually outsold Pac-Man, largely due to conversion kits, because you could actually, instead of buying a whole cabinet of Ms. Pac-Man, you could buy from your dealer a conversion kit, which gave you a marquee, side art, and everything like that, control panel overlay, and essentially you would convert your Pac-Man to a Ms. Pac-Man. Unfortunately, we lost a lot of Pac-Man cabinets that way. So, let's take a look at Ms. Pac-Man. I'm going to try and not deafen us. Not yet. Looks simple enough. Didn't sound anywhere near as annoying as Pac-Man did. I will have to say, Pac-Man, that siren did really. I made mention that my dad couldn't stand it, and now as I'm older, I understand why. All right, let's play it again. So essentially, the object of the game is just like you play the arcade game. You clear the dots, avoid the monsters, or ghosts, whatever you want to call them. Use the energizers to your advantage so you can turn them blue, or in this case, they don't give me the tie. How about that? That's interesting. They did that in Pac-Man, but not in this Pac-Man. Of course, 10,000 points gets you an extra life, but boy, you will certainly work for it here, especially with the scoring. As the ghosts are only worth 100, 200, 400, and 800. And that flashing little dot there, that little sound means that there is a fruit that is dancing around. Really? And it just disappears like that. Alright. Okay. Was it disappear? Oh, I got it for 100 points. Yay! And you're not going to come out. Of course not. I showed you. Now the maze will change ever so slightly. This was a good effort, I will say that. I was happy to have it. Although, as I sit here as an adult of this day and age, forgot about that. Hey. I have a Ms. Pac-Man in my living room, and it's been retrofitted with a multicade, and there's like 55 games in it. And so I have Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Junior Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man, Pac-Man, and Pal, Pac-Mania, Pac this, Pac that, Pac everything else. So, why not? Let's try it one more time, shall we? There's head-to-head in this Pac-Man. Now, like his Pac-Man counterpart... Really? It's the difference of score. So as you see, the score just went back to 0, and now shows that there's an arrow in my end direction, because I'm the player to the right. Oh goodness, this is hard to play. I just realized I left my music on. Good job. You know, everything goes right the first time around. Oh, two-player games much harder to control, I've discovered. Alrighty, good job. First try. Yeah, I guess. I've gone, I did a video of about 2-3 weeks ago. We did arcade versus console. What that is on the Saturday streams at noon. I will take an arcade game of yesteryear and then stack their console games up against it to see how well they rate and compare and all that kind of stuff. And of course, you got to do Pac-Man. Pac-Man, the arcade game, is a superb game. There's a big story about that when it came out, when it premiered in the show that it did alongside with Defender. And Rally X, the game that everyone loved and adored, was Rally X. And you're probably asking yourself, what the hell is Rally X? Yes. That's a little car, cat and mouse car chase game, if you will. And if you've not heard of it, I wouldn't be surprised at all. But the two games that didn't fare well were, of course, Pac-Man and Defender. And they would, that later on that year, they would be 1 and 2 top arcade sales, respectively. So, of course, you got to have Rally X, and you can find it in the Namco Museum or one of the Namco things they released over the years. The only thing that's noteworthy about Rally X is that when you play Tekken, you play, head-to-head with somebody, as opposed to playing one player in the arcade. You get this, as you progress wins in the game, you get little symbols, and one of them is a flag with an S. And I remember back when we were in the arcades and people were like, what is that? And I knew what it was, but people thought it was like a special marker. You got your 20th game or something like that. No, it was the double score flag that you would, if you get, everything would double afterwards in Rally X, and that's really all it was. So there. Anywho, this I did the Pac-Man comparables, and I was telling the story about how Ms. Pac-Man came around. Ms. Pac-Man is not a true sequel to Pac-Man because Namco never made it. It was actually produced by, it was actually created as a game called Crazy Auto by some ex-MIT students. And Midway bought it from them, and essentially it got turned into Ms. Pac-Man, and it made a ton of money and got Namco's attention. Of course, they didn't authorize it, but they forgave them, and they said, "Okay, we just want our cut of the share, because we, after all, did create Pac-Man." And of course, that's what happened. Years and years and years later, now we got the My Arcades out there and the little handheld things you find like in Walmart and whatever. There's a copyright dispute over Ms. Pac-Man because CCE, Consumer Computers, Electronics, stuff like that, they actually were the people who created the game as the MIT students. And they were purchased by Midway, but of course Namco ultimately got the rights, but they didn't acquire the rights in the normal route. Remember, it was made without their initial authorization, so there's a bit of a dispute with that, and that's why in the last Pac-Man collection that we found for the consoles and Steam, Ms. Pac-Man is omitted from that particular collection because there is now a copyright dispute. So how about that? The actual sequel to Pac-Man was Super Pac-Man, which came out, I believe, in 1982, as opposed to Pac-Man's 1980. So there's that. So Ms. Pac-Man here for the Coleco arcade tabletop played similar to that of Pac-Man and wasn't nearly as annoying sounding. It had a head-to-head game. It had a one-player game. It had a demo. And it was hard as hell. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It wasn't a good thing per se, but it's not a bad thing. Yeah. Yeah, in a way, yeah. One Up Arcade, of course, did get the rights to do Ms. Pac-Man, but they got it through Namco. Well, there was also another company that's also making their own version of Ms. Pac-Man, and that's why you find them in a lot of the bar tops, as you call it. So yes, that is the reason why you find a plethora of Ms. Pac-Man out there in various means. Cheaper to acquire, I wouldn't say that. Namco did make the Ms. Pac-Man Galaga 25th anniversary a number of years ago as an arcade cabinet. It sold for $2,500 brand new then. It actually, instead of using a 19-inch CRT monitor, I believe it used a 33-inch monitor, which was huge, barely fit the cabinet. But they still make money off of that. So it's still licensable. And why not? So they paired it up with their one of their most popular games, Galaga, because they both premiered in 1981. So it's good stuff. I love Ms. Pac-Man. I've always I have, like I said, I have one from a humongous arcade from Florida, and it's all beat up. It got played to death and everything like that, and it still works. I don't mind. I happen to love it. Now, why aren't you working? There you go. One more game, then we'll wrap it up for the night because we're at the 90-minute mark. After all this, you're on Twitch, play games. Well, they didn't tell me what type of games to play. So, hell, I'll play these. I'm so close to being a boomer, though. Okay. Good job. Let's run right into the ghost, shall we? Get these ones around the ghost box. Yeah, and well, yeah. I mean, Midway was a huge manufacturer of gaming in North America, and they had the backing of Bally, one of the largest pinball manufacturers in North America. Um, yeah. A lot of what happened was that when Midway was selling Ms. Pac-Man out to the arcade owners and such, and remember these, you'd find arcade games in like diners and grocery stores even. But they approached the Pac-Man uh, owners and operators and said, "Hey, we got a conversion kit." And we actually saw the Ms. Pac-Man arcade board, the control, the rather the PC board. It literally was a daughter board sitting on top of a Pac-Man, and that daughter board changed the characters and sounds and whatnot. So if you took it off, theoretically, you would still have a Pac-Man game. It's just that it's been a reprogrammed Pac-Man game. So what they did is they also allowed you to convert your Pac-Man to a Ms. Pac-Man. So you switch out the marquee, you put some vinyl overlay onto the side art, and so forth. And we've actually lost some Pac-Man cabinets as a result of that. But you got to remember, they also made the cabaret style. That would be the smaller arcade cabinets that weren't as pretty, and they only had a 13-inch monitor. And I have a something of a Pac-Man like that in my garage that I built out of a PlayStation kiosk that we used to have in my store. Um, and of course, the cocktail tables, which were very convenient. Um, they were cheap in comparison to the full coin up stand up. So yeah, you found Miss Pac-Man damn all over the place. I found one in a Mr. Donut. I never think I'd find one in a donut shop, but there it is. I found a Miss Pac-Man cocktail table in a donut shop back when I was a kid. So yeah, sure, why not? And in grocery stores and in arcades and my dad's friend's back room and wherever and anywhere and all that kind of neat stuff. More than you would find in Pac-Man, absolutely. It's kind of sad too because Pac-Man, being the one of the top arcade games in existence to this day, and when you consider that they made 25 cents per game back in those days. Um, there was a Mr. Donut in the United States. I'll confirm that it was in South Florida. This was I think this was back in 1982, and we were getting donuts, and that's why I happened to see it, and I said, "Wow, that thing is everywhere." So there it is, and that's all I'll say about that. Mr. Donut is it started off as its own brand. Ultimately, it got as they say in the business, merged with Dunkin' Donuts. And I remember a few years back, Dunkin' Donuts celebrated its 50th anniversary or something like that. And if you saw the labeling that they did back in those days, they brought back their old logo with the Dunkin' and the donuts and the coffee cup logo. But alongside of it was the Mr. Donut logo, with the guy with the big bow tie. So yeah, they existed in the United States, but I imagine Mr. Donut was a bit more international at the time than Dunkin' Donuts. Dunkin' Donuts was literally a coffee and donut shop back in those days. So there's that. You're on the wrong game. Okay. So that's pretty much it for tonight. Coleco tabletop. How hard is it? It was pretty tough. It looked the same. It's kind of like 2/3 of the duck. It walked like a duck. It quacked like a duck, but it didn't quite play like the duck. It had its own game mechanics haphazardly, but they were quite the collector's items to have back in the day. And I'm pleased to see that they're still out there in people's homes. I see them. There's a Facebook group out there, the Retro Game, where people post their units and everything like that. I'm glad to see that people still have them. Some even still have their boxes, much to my amazement. I got rid of mine a long time ago because I was a kid. I played them. I never thought that they would be like collector's items. But then again, they're still up in my garage now on one of the top shelves. So, who knew? But that's going to be out for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me, Nerd Dad TPC. I greatly appreciate it. I'll see you again on your stream relatively soon, I think. Absolutely, I appreciate you hanging out. I really do. Thanks a lot. And for those who see the VOD here or just kind of out there and not chatting, that's fine. But if you like what you saw, give me a follow. I do have a YouTube page that's the backup of this particular channel of all the videos that are no longer on stream. I also have my original YouTube page, and I don't know about you, Nerdad. I have, back when I was a kid, there was a game show called Match Game. And you can find it on Buzzer or Game Show Network or whatever like that. I did a tribute channel back in 2006. So I haven't updated that thing in over 10 years, but what the hell, I might as well just promote it one more time. I also have an Instagram page where you can see all the junk that I've collected over the years. There's a link for that here on Twitch as well. You want to check it out, be my guest. And I will see you again on Thursday night when we'll do the classic role-playing game, Back to Crystallis. Yeah, I'm on YouTube. Like I said, it's just it's a backup of what I don't have on Twitch here anymore. So in a week's time, this video will be on YouTube just because I hate things disappearing forever. But in the internet, that's almost impossible now, isn't it? So there's that. Thanks a lot. Appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time. You're on Super Pac. Good night. Really would appreciate it. Thanks. Peace.